Hello, welcome back to Investing with Daren. Today I have my friend Sam with me, and we're going to talk about the different money mindsets across cultures. So, Sam, who are you?
Yeah, my name is Samuel Jeanblanc. Thanks for inviting me, Darren.
Welcome.
I'm French originally, but I've been living in Singapore for almost 5 years now. And I've lived in 14 different places across my life, mainly thanks to my parents.
Wow, that's basically 11 more places than I have. Name some of these places, the audience will be very curious.
Yeah, sure. So the reason why I traveled a lot is because my mother is a French ambassador. So throughout her work, she would take us, her children, with her. And so we've lived in Canada, we've lived in Japan, we've lived in France, we've lived in the U.S. And then it became a virus. So even myself, once I went to university, and then started working, I kept on traveling. So I've lived on my own in New York, in Shanghai, in Ho Chi Minh, in Singapore, in Dublin, and now soon in Tokyo.
That's a world traveler. And I know many of us in the audience hope to travel again. So we're going to live vicariously through Sam in the next 20, 30 minutes to just hear the stories.
Sure.
Many of us know that actually like the way we approach things, not just money, but even relationships, work, career, personal goals, really depends on our mindsets. And I'm here speaking with Sam because he's got the opportunity to really just experience different mindsets, experiencing new ones in Tokyo eventually, and just break down like what's same and what's different across cultures. So to level set the audience, like if you could share with the audience, like how would you rate yourself from a financial literacy standpoint? If let's say 1, you know nothing about finances, to 10, you are writing the book that Warren Buffett reads, where would you rate yourself?
No, a 5, maybe a 6. But I have maybe a 9 out of 10 on experiences, adventures, travels, which maybe, in my view at least, is more important than the money.
Agree. Because money is just a resource. It's a tool to enable experiences and enable the things that we want to do.
That's true. Correct.
I should like to ask on that, like, what is money for you? What is it to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, okay, maybe I can go back in time a bit and tell you where my views on money come from. So, the first thing is my mother, as I said, was an ambassador. But when I was 10, my parents separated. So at first, my father could follow her through every 3 or 4 years, and as an ambassador, you change countries. And so at first, my father, who's a banker, was able to follow her through, but then eventually he couldn't. So he went back to France, and then they ended up separating on good terms, but separating still. And so she was a single mom, and she took care of 3 kids while having an ambassador job and moving countries on a regular basis. And so she's my hero. She's someone that I extremely respect. But also, as a kid, for some reason, I felt very shy or very uncomfortable going and asking her for pocket money, right?
Oh.
Because I perceived her as a hardworking single mom that had to take care of the place where we lived, and pay the rent and pay our schools and pay our extracurricular activities and pay for our travels, and so I think in our household, money was always a bit of a taboo. So we never talked about it. We never talked about amounts, investing, planning, whatever that is. On top of that, the French culture overall is not very open about talking about money and salaries in general. So all of this meant that I wasn't fully educated or aware, or didn't really even put a lot of importance on money. However, travels, everything that my mom allowed us to discover, and then on my own, I think I put a lot of importance to it. And I think our mother did a great job at educating about the importance of traveling, exploring the world, understanding cultures, empathy. And for me, these are very important values. So to your question, what is money for me is a way for me to get access to more travel, more open mindset, more adventures, more journeys.
And with money as a tool, enabler, it's a means to an end and not the ends in itself. At what point do you decide to maybe, rather than passively getting money, to actively thinking about how to manage it? Is there a transition point that happened in your life?
Yeah, it's a good question. So at first I was again, I have a 5 or a 6 out of 10 on investment, but at first I would just store whatever money I got in my first job on my bank account and not do anything with it. And then once or twice a year I would do this crazy journey, go to Mongolia and travel on a horse, or go in the jungle in South America and learn how to survive. And then I would spend like $3,000-$4,000 on that trip, and that's where my money would go. I think eventually, and especially because of the pandemic, we haven't been able to use that money as much, and so I've been simply investing it on very simple assets, but with almost no knowledge of anything, no active investing, nothing like that really.
As you travel in all different countries, I mean, even from your childhood to even today, you've been traveling to different places for work as well. How have you noticed the different mindsets when it comes to talking about money or using money?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and I think you can break it down almost in two, right? You can see differences across countries, but you can also see in a single country different ways, depending on which, I think, part of the population you would look into. So, as an example, I spent a lot of time in the Philippines because I was managing a part of our one of our teams looking after the Philippines. We work in the same company, and you would see amongst the wealthiest in the Philippines a different mindset of saving, investing, launching companies, and then on the lower strat, a lot more maybe spending and using whatever money you got because you don't have much, and so you would rather enjoy it and have some kind of pleasures out of it. And so in one single country you would have those different attitudes. And then of course you take, for example, France as a country. I think in France, money for historical reasons is always a little bit frowned upon, mainly because we come from we were a kingdom until 1789, and so before 1789 all the money was really owned by the nobility and the king, and all the rest of the population was mostly oppressed. And so once we had our revolution in 1789 and we decapitated the king, etc., I think anything related to money kind of brought back those memories of if you have money, you're associated with nobility, which is always kind of frowned upon in our culture. In the U.S., where I've also lived, it's the complete opposite. People would openly talk about salaries, investments, how much they make, and even brag about it. And now I've learned to live with it, but it's for a Frenchman, to hear those stories and hear about people, kind of almost comparing salaries at a social dinner, right? Was always shocking to me. I was like, how could they even talk about this? But eventually I got used to it. I remember when we were living still North America, in Canada, we were living in that neighborhood in a house, and then the house next to us was this massive mansion. And the owner, was a successful businessman and had launched his own business, would talk about the price of his car and would constantly talk about the price of the pool that he had just built or the roof he had just put on his house. And I remember for our family, it was like, wow, what is this guy talking about? This is not something you would do in France, really.
That's really interesting. Like, how about you? Like, are you someone who's really discreet about your money, or are you a bit more open? Do you share it? And if you do share, do you just share it with friends? Do you share it with family? I know some of my friends who actually are more open talking about money with their friends than with their family, because with family it can always be a bit complicated. Let us know in the comments what you think. So Sam, one thing that I caught on from your earlier statements as well, like how those who have wealth, or those who are say from the elite or the top 20% of the country, they tend to have a longer term horizon when it comes to, they plan. There's more planning, there's more intentional actions. Whereas those who are arising from the bottom up, maybe we're still living in a simpler state, we may think in shorter time horizons, like day by day, week on week, month on month, paycheck by paycheck.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not a sociologist in any way, but first, I think to think about investment, you need to have money, right? So it's easy for us that live in Singapore and make a decent salary to think that everybody could do what we do, and it's not the case. I mean, I'm pretty sure 80% of the world population doesn't even have the means after they pay for their rent and the food and their kids to actually save anything, right? So we need to realize that we're definitely in a position of we're in a favored position. I think also definitely depending on the the toughness of your job. Once you actually get that paycheck at the end of the month or the week, you definitely want to do something with it because you've worked so hard and sweated so much to actually get access to it, and so you want to spend it in a certain way. So yeah, I think we need to realize that investing it's not that people don't want to, or it's easy to say, hey, you should save some of that salary you've earned, but it's probably also because it's easy for people that make decent money, and after they pay the rent and pay everything, if they still have money left, it's super easy to invest it. Versus when you just earn enough to pay for everything, then I think you would be more inclined to spend the little money you have left. Some of it is education, and kudos to your channel for doing some of that. But we need to realize that not everybody is in a position to invest simply.
And some of us have read articles or books saying or even research when you're living in poverty, your state of mind, the way your brain works is just different. You're just thinking about you're in survival mode. Do I have enough food to eat? Do I have electricity? You may not even have internet. And thinking about 1 month, 1 year ahead seems too theoretical at that stage. And as you travel,
and sorry, and let me add something there. I also believe that, and I think that's a shame, but the the people that are rich in this world get even more access to richness than those that are poor. So as an example,
yes.
I think you recently published a video around you got a credit line of 50,000 by
Yes.
your bank, right?
Yes.
These credit lines are only granted to people that are already wealthy and probably already saving. And so you get into that flywheel, which is, by the way, pretty unequal, right? Where you're already rich, you already have savings, you don't really need extra money, but the bank gives you another credit line because they know that that money is not so much at risk, and so it's a constant flywheel to the top, but also in a certain extent to the bottom if you're not born in the right family or in the right country. So I do think that there are inequalities underlining all of this, and so we need to be conscious of it. If you're earning $1,000 a month SGD, there's no way the bank is ever going to loan you anything, and so you can't get into that investment mode and buy stocks. So we need to be conscious that we're privileged, and because we're privileged, we get access to privileged tools, and so we are even more privileged, and that's how inequality really works.
Agree. And deepening that, if we think of supply and demand, those with wealth or those with options, they can choose to move to another bank, to another broker, and that's why their highest net worth customers would always get the best rates.
It's true.
The rich get richer. Actually, even in consumer goods, when I used to work in consumer goods a long time ago, say in Indonesia or Philippines, when we sell a sachet of shampoo, where it's cheap in absolute value, let's say 50 cents or 20 cents, actually the cost per ml is the highest.
That's true.
That rich person buying it from a Target or Walmart, this big 1-2 kg bottle of shampoo, that's the lowest cost per ml.
That's correct.
Because in consumer goods pricing, we call it price breaks. We must always give consumers an incentive to buy the larger volume unit. But then what it creates then is some of these companies get more profits from the poorest than the richest customers.
That's true. That's true. And to a certain extent, a lot of startups out there that are democratizing banking, finance, think of mobile wallets, think of mobile banks. I think they're doing the world a favor because they're giving access. A clear example, again, I've worked a lot in the Philippines, remittances, right? So people that are OFW, overseas Filipino workers, they work very, very hard on ships, in homes, sometimes in very dire conditions, and then most of what they earn, they actually send back home. But most of the remittance companies, the traditional ones, would take crazy fees, 30, 20% back in their pocket, and then the family at the end of the line only gets 60, 70, maybe 80% of what the worker actually has earned. And I think through to a certain extent, digital banking, we can do a better job there, and give back a fuller portion of that salary. And I think that's a good thing.
You know, one tangent to that, some of the people who are proponents of cryptocurrency, they say because with cryptocurrency, there is no transaction fee.
Yeah,
You may have heard that before. Like, what's your take on that?
yeah, crypto. You know, I'm a little cautious, so I'm not a big partisan. I think there's a lot of speculation, and I don't see the intricate value, at least today, of a Bitcoin. So I wouldn't be the biggest supporter of even the technology, but I think it's yet to be seen. I think the concepts that crypto and NFTs bring are interesting in philosophy, you know, conceptually. How it actually materializes is yet to be seen. You know, Tesla, for example, just said they won't accept Bitcoin anymore. Well, at first they said they would. So I still don't see a practical value for all those cryptocurrencies, but I understand, you know, the value of what the technology could be. Is it going to be that way? Is it really impossible to breach? Can't you game the system? That part I'm a little less confident about that. So I'm a little bit bearish on when it comes to cryptos.
Let us know what you think in the comments. Like, do you think crypto is something that will liberalize the world, like be the future of currency, actually make things a bit more equal? Or is it even an investment?
Hot air.
Yes. Or is it a bubble? Let us know.
I mean, one thing that always strikes me a lot is I think Coinbase is one of the biggest exchanges in the world.
Yes,
They went
recently IPO.
They went IPO, and you know, the promise of Bitcoin and crypto is that there would be no fees in the middle.
Yeah.
But Coinbase makes billions of dollars from people buying and selling Bitcoin.
Yes.
So what the heck, you know, there should be no Coinbase if really those currency can be traded amongst people. And maybe it's because I don't understand the technicality, and I'm sure, you know, you're gonna criticize me in the comments, but I still believe that something is not working really well. The technology is not delivering what it says it should, and for me that's a big red flag. So I will never, well, at least for now, I will never buy any crypto.
And let's learn together. Sam, coming back to your passion and love for travels, how has your mind opened up as you travel and experience different countries and cultures?
Yeah, so first, maybe, as I said, you know, you can compare across countries. You can compare in the same country. One of the most important experience in my life was when I was 16. So when I was 16, I was a teenager, and so I had this spell of bad grades in school. And so when I was 16, I actually had to redo one of my years because I didn't graduate. You know, I was passionate in other things, and I was doing a lot of other stuff, but not studying in school. So that summer, so when I turned 16, I failed, so I had to redo the class in September. But during the summer, of course, my family was disappointed. My parents, my friends, even my teachers, really, my classmates. And so I wanted to prove to the world that I was still worthy.
Okay.
So I come from a small village in France called near Annecy, which is in the Alps. And, you know, my village is about 2,000 people. And so I went there early in June, and I had done the first CV in my life. And I had printed 30 copies, and I went around my village and gave it to all the shops I knew, even, you know, further shops, asking for a summer job. And one shop called me back and said, yeah, we do offer, we're looking for extra manpower during the summer because it's very busy. We can give you a 2-month contract. And so I took it. And I was so proud because I was proving to the world that I was worthy and I could work, etc. This was one of the most important experiences of my life. For 2 months, I was basically putting stuff in shelves.
Okay.
Waking up at 5:30 a.m. to be at 6 a.m. at the shop, you know, get the merchandise, put in the shelf, including fresh produce in fridge. And I learned many lessons. The first one is that when you get your check at the end of those 30 days, I think when we work in tech, for example, right? You forget sometimes about months. Yeah, you get your salary at the end of the month, but you know, sometimes weeks go by and you don't really realize that time is going through. But if you're working with your hands, I can guarantee you at the end of those 30 days, when you get your check, you understand what sweat, what hard work, what lack of sleep went into that check, and so every euro or every dollar in it is very important. That's the first lesson. And the second lesson was the people that I was working with. Some of them had done this for their entire life. They were in their 50s, sometimes even 60s, and their whole life they had worked in that shop and put stuff into shelves. But their level of happiness, the value they put into hard work, was for me extremely inspiring. I really, really, really appreciated the values that I found in that group, and all of them became my friends. And every time I go back to my village now, I go and see them, and we have great memories. To the point, I enjoyed that experience so much that the next summer, although I didn't need to prove to the world anything anymore because I was doing great in school, I went back. I went back for another 2 months, and then the next summer I went back again. So I did 3 summers. Instead of going with my friends to the beach and enjoying life and relaxing, I would wake up at 5:30, go to the shop, put stuff into shelves my entire day. But it was a great school, and the lessons and the values I saw in that environment are with me until the end. So just to give you, even in France, I discovered a group of people or a strat of the population that I wouldn't normally interact with, and I've learned so much and enjoyed that experience so much. So again, you can explore across countries, you can explore in your own country as well.
Great. That's such a powerful experience for you. I definitely saw your eyes light up when you talked about that. And
Thanks.
one of the big things across cultures is how we approach the work ethic. Like in some cultures, some parts of other countries, they believe that you deserve what you put in. In other countries, they believe that we should give everyone a level playing field. We should give everyone a safety net.
It's true.
And sometimes this manifests through, let's say, higher taxations to provide for healthcare, for education. And you've lived in countries where you've seen both extremes. Like in Singapore, the tax rate is really low.
Correct.
There's still some decent healthcare, but the safety net is very different from many parts of Europe, for instance.
Right.
How has your view of this evolved as you got the opportunity to just live in all these different systems?
Wow, that's we could write a book. We should write it.
You should write a book.
But it's a great question. I think I've learned a lot from Singapore. There's this saying, I love Singapore with all my head, right? So there isn't much in terms of history, culture. They are, of course, the usual national museums, but compared to a city like Paris, London, Tokyo, you definitely don't have the same level of culture and excitement. But you can still love the city with your head, meaning you're just impressed by how efficient, but also, the path travel from, 1965, right?
Yeah.
All the way to today. I think what Lee Kuan Yew has built and the rest of the politician is still pretty amazing.
And let there be no mistakes about this. Whoever governs Singapore must have that iron in him, or give it up. This is not a game of cards. This is your life and mine. I've spent a whole lifetime building this.
So, having said that, I've always been a big believer in the state leveling the playing field. I think it's something that's really important because, probably 50% of our life is decided by luck, by the luck of where you're born, really. Which country you're born in, which family you're born in, the quality of your parents, the richness of your household. And I've even read, rich American people saying the exact same thing. There's this guy you may have heard of called Scott Galloway. That's a big
professor in New York University.
Exactly, yeah, NYU Stern. And so he recognized that himself came from a poor upbringing, and he's a big proponent of some kind of state intervention to level the playing field, to allow people that are extremely smart but that were born in the not such a favorable environment to be able to rise up and have the same chances as people that were born with a lot of money. So I think that's important. In Singapore, I've seen a system that I believe, from what I see, works actually quite well. And I've been impressed. Low taxes, definitely, especially on capital gains, which is crazy. I think capital gains is one of the most unequal form of
0% capital gains tax in Singapore.
Yeah, one of the most unequal forms of income. On capital gains, I think to a certain extent, capital gains are the most unequal form of income. And mainly because you can inherit a lot of money from your family, for example, place it on a bank account, get dividends out of this, and without you working very hard or even putting any effort, you actually get a big income out of this. And I think that's to a certain extent inequality. A very, very French way to think about this, by the way, but I do believe that more and more, and you've seen Warren Buffett, you've seen Bill Gates call out that if there's no way for the state to redistribute wealth and make sure that there's a equal playing field, then inequality rises, and I think that's bad overall for society. It's not normal that some people, just because they were born in the wrong environment, should struggle their entire life.
Agree.
While they're actually very hardworking, versus others can just chill out.
Fully agree. And as you've been traveling in all these different countries now, and now that you've been working for these past few years, for many people who are working overseas watching this video now, they're wondering also like, in my home countries, I'll probably be like contributing back to my safety net, my retirement funds. But that's not always available for someone who's working overseas in a work pass or an employment pass. How do you think about it? Like, do you even think about it in the early years, or you thought like, I've got still some time to plan for it?
Yeah, it's a very tricky question. In France, you have a very strong safety net, but for to have access to it, you need to have worked in France and contributed to the social security system through your employer paying a certain amount of your salary to it. If you don't, then you don't have access to it. And so if ever I work my entire life abroad and I go back home, I won't have access to, for example, state retirement, which is something, a pension that the French government would pay workers that have contributed to the social security system over their whole career. I think you need to work 40 years, 41 years, I don't remember the exact number, to have access to it, right? So I need to definitely start saving and think about this. Unfortunately, I think for expats, you're both in a very good situation, because I do believe that you may earn more than if you were working in France, but at the same time, there aren't easy tools that you can use to plan for it. So you need to do the research yourself and place the money into the right funds and the right investment vehicles. So again, I have a 5 out of 10 on investment, so I haven't thought enough about this, but definitely something I need to do now. Because I'm going to retire when I'm 65, 70, and I need to have some money to be able to survive.
And we're all learning this together, right? Like, so some of you, I know some of you who are watching this video, you're actually from all over the world. Like, share in the comments advice for Sam and I, or anyone else in your position. What are you doing to just continue building up a savings or investments for that eventual retirement?
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this. I'm not a big proponent of saving like crazy your first 10 years or 15 years of your career, 20 years, and then retiring when you're 40 or 50. I actually believe that your work must have meaning, and so I'm actually excited to work until I'm 70, 75, whatever that age would be. I think that working is great. I love my work. I get a lot of meaning and learnings from it, and I don't want to stop. I actually have a good story. One of my best friends is a YouTuber.
Okay.
And he's in Brazil, and so he struggled a lot at the start. He married a Brazilian, moved to Brazil, became a French teacher for Brazilians, and he was making what a tutor would do, not a lot. And then eventually he launched his YouTube channel, and he became widely successful. And now he has a thriving business attached to the channel, and it's almost kind of free income. Like he's built everything up, and he's worked very hard. But now, just money keeps flowing in, and it's working out for him. I was chatting with him recently, and he said at some point, he was making enough through his channel and the courses he was selling to not work so much anymore. And he went through deep depression because, where was the meaning anymore? What do you do with your life?
Yeah.
And so rather than trying to get extremely save a lot very, very fast and then live out of your dividends, so get a rent, and then where do you take your life from there? I'm more a proponent of find meaning in your work, enjoy what you're doing, earn good money for it, but never stop doing it. I enjoy every day that I wake up and work. I think everybody should try for that perspective as well.
Agree, especially if we can find your calling or the work that we feel passionate about and we care about. I understand not all of us have that opportunity. We're working hard to try to get there. And yes, there'll be some of us who health situations make it impossible for us to do that sometimes. Or we're in a country where certain opportunities aren't available either for certain genders,
Absolutely.
certain age groups, certain types of backgrounds.
Absolutely.
I think both of us are very fortunate in this situation to be able to continue pursuing that passion.
Yeah.
And thank you for that perspective. Because sometimes there's no right or wrong, it's what resonates with you, what's true to your values. For some, like another perspective is, for some is, if I can hit financial freedom, say at a certain number, like 40 years old, I can then devote my time to causes I'm passionate about, whether it's a charity, an NGO, to family, or to even causes that you think are important, like climate change or animal welfare. But still, the point is find what's true to you, find what resonates with you.
Yeah, that's
and,
correct.
and that answer could change over time as well. What you believe in your 20s can evolve a lot in your 30s as well.
Yeah, 100%. And sometimes and I'm not very literate, but I do read a lot, and I hear those people that say, hey, if you save, I don't know, $2 million by when you're whatever 40 or 50, then the dividends are enough for you to have a decent lifestyle.
Yeah.
But those needs in money will change over time, right? So when you're 20, you think that with $1 million at 2% a year is enough for you to make a living, but then you have kids, right? And then you have a bigger passion, and then you want to move into a bigger place because you have 3 kids, and then all of a sudden those needs actually move. So I don't think there's a moment where you can say, hey, I'm done, I can just retire, because your need and what you care about in life would also change. So at some point it can be money and saving a lot and earning a lot, and at another point it can be growing a family or traveling.
Sam, you mentioned like your next journey is going to bring you to Japan.
Right. Yes.
How will you think about finances, savings, or investments? What's going to change when you move to a new country now?
So maybe to give some perspective, before coming to Singapore, I was working in Dublin, and in Dublin the situation was very different. You get quite high taxes. Capital gain taxes are extremely high. I remember when we used to get stocks, and they would vest. So let's say you got 4 stocks, the government would sell 3 because they would take 52% taxes on those stocks, and then they would give you a check out of because they needed the 2%. If it was 50%, they would have sold 2, but because it was 52, they would sell 3, give you a check for the remaining amount, and then 1 stock. So on your contract, it said 4 stocks every year or whatever, but in reality, you would only get 1 and then a check. So that's how the tax would be, and I would put all the money that I earned in my bank account, not invested at all, because I wanted to keep it for my adventures and the crazy stuff that I would do. I think in Singapore it was slightly different because the taxes are much lower, so I had a bit more income to put on the side. What I'm learning though is that Singapore is probably one of the peak countries in terms of actually what you earn. And so I know for a fact that moving to Japan, my rent would increase crazily because real estate is much more expensive in Tokyo. And second, my taxes would also go up and my salary would go down a bit. So I think I will have to readjust to that new normal for me. At the same time, Japan is an extremely rich country in terms of culture, in terms of history, in terms of old castles and beautiful places to see. And I know for a fact I'm going to spend a lot more money on traveling inside Japan. And so I need to get ready for this. I think I'm going to save a lot less when I'm actually in Japan.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. I definitely want to go back to Japan. I'm going to meet Sam there when borders reopen next year as well.
Yeah, sure.
Sam, what's one last tip you have for our viewers, for someone who's in a position like you, like they're not sure what to do with their finances, like maybe they've got enough money in the bank, they don't have a crisis, but then the road ahead isn't clear,
Right.
and that's a bit scary. What's one
Right.
tip you have?
Yeah, of course. Again, we're in a lucky position. So the first thing I would say is make sure you secure your base, right? So don't overspend, don't get into credit, especially for consumption. Try to pay your rent, pay all that you need to pay with your salary. That's the first bit, really, right? And to a certain extent, that means not living above what your salary allows you to do. Once you're there, and once you have extra money, I would say spend as much as you can first on life. So what I mean life is not buying a new Ferrari, but it's traveling, it's adventures, it's meeting people, it's the journeys, things that you will remember and you will there's this test that I call the Deathbed Test. So, what will you say to your kids when you're actually on your deathbed and your grandkids? Will you tell them, "Oh, I remember that time where I put $10 in a Tesla stock," or "Oh, I remember that amazing journey that I did across Mongolia, meeting people in the steppes." You'll probably tell the second story, right?
Yeah.
So try to focus on those first, and then of course, any extra on top of this is something that you should invest with.
Thank you, Sam. That was profound. Share with us in the comments, like, how is your life story, and does it pass the deathbed test, as Sam mentioned? It's a good reminder just for us to think, like, in our final days, what we truly will remember is the memories, the people, our loved ones, and not any physical assets or how much wealth that we have.
Again, easy for me to say in a position of wealth, but I think for many people, it's just for first and foremost to secure that, secure their salaries, secure their well-being.
Agree. So with that, thank you for watching today's episode. If you liked interviews like this, hit the subscribe button so that you'll see more interviews. I try to publish one interview usually once every 3 to 4 weeks. So see you soon in the next video. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Daren.
That's really cool. That was a gift.